I'm Tanesha,
And I'm Kiara.
and you're now entering the Sister Chat. Welcome to Main Event Mama's podcast. Woo!
Woo, woo. Excited to be back with you guys this week. We have a lot going on, but I'm happy to be here, right?
Of course, you're going to get multiple times of the mamas. My brain definitely went. It went.
Multiple episodes this week, essentially. But this is our parenting and adulting episode, and we have quite a lot to cover. So I want to say this is your time before we get started and get all wrapped up to hit that subscribe button. It'll appear on the screen like always. You want to take a minute to hit that bell and start your subscription with us so you'll be the first to see our content when it arrives. All right, so let's talk.
Let's do it.
In the world of parenting, there has been a lot of change this week in my world. So we're talking end of school, we're talking finals, we're talking everybody home again, and mom having no alone time, 0 alone time. And in the South, there's certainly a lot of challenges that faces. But I've also seen a lot of angst, and I think I mentioned this previously with my kids and they're wrapping up the school year and kind of just the challenges that has on them and feeling super stressed out about finals, about school, and even to the point where some don't want to go. Like, I don't even want to go to school. So I'd love to talk a little bit about that and just delve into the mental health space, self-acceptance space, and talk about how kids can thrive at school, because it's also Pride Month. And there's a lot going on with our youth today. So I think it's a good opportunity to just dive into our kids' world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Of course. I mean, for me, the school year is starting to wrap up a little bit. And I feel like I have multiple events happening back to back to back to back to back. And all they want is money, 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 money. And
Yes.
I'd be like, where do you think this come from? A tree I planted in the backyard?
Like one, if you have one.
I would have, if that was the case, you know how many people actually have the money tree?
I need a money tree. We'll get into that a little bit too when we get into the adulting, because I feel like that's a huge component of our lives right now with this economy. But anyway.
Yes, focusing.
So what are some of the biggest mental health challenges you're seeing, like a lot of young kids and young adults are facing right now, especially at school, right? So what have you seen with your kids and kind of their interactions with others?
I mean, I've definitely seen anxiety. I've definitely seen not wanting to go to school because either being bullied or being misunderstood or not getting along with someone, and it's really affecting them mentally where they just don't want to be there. I've also, it's definitely with my oldest, I've definitely experienced that a lot. I mean, now I think because we changed schools, it has been a lot better. I'm not saying he hasn't tried not to go to school, but he can't find a real reason other than, that one teacher, why he can't go to school. But when he used to go to his other high school and middle school, there would be times where he would not go to school for days. And it was normally because of either someone either bullying him or I remind you guys, my son is a high functioning autistic kid. So on the outside, he doesn't look like he has any issues. He looks like a normal teenager, but on the inside, there's a lot of things happening. And sometimes, and which I also find in that type of community as well, in the special needs community, is that they pick on each other too, because they ain't like the other one. So
my kids, they have this saying, it's like the tism is strong. That's what they say now. The tism is strong.
The tism. Oh.
Yeah. It's weird, but that's what they've been saying, which got me thinking, like you said, they have their own community. And it's never like in a mean way. I can say that at least. It's like they claim it on themselves. Like the tism is strong for me today. I heard that and I had to ask. I was like, what's a tism?
Yeah,
and
what is like, it? Because I'm about to ask you, what is that? Okay.
And I was like, y'all shortened it? And they were like, yeah. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. I don't.
I've never heard my oldest say that, but I wouldn't be surprised, I guess.
I don't know if it's a saying. Y'all can tell if you heard this from your kids.
Maybe it's a down south thing.
It could be. I mean,
some things up here, it's not down there. Some things down there ain't up here. You know,
it could be. Generational, I really don't
I don't
know.
know.
I had never heard this until maybe last month, and I was like, why are you saying this? Yeah,
I guess awareness is a good thing.
it is. I think in that case, um, the one thing I have noticed is that there's a lot more conversation about it than when we were growing up.
Absolutely,
And certainly
absolutely.
there's a lot more acceptance of it. For instance, I know like we've talked a little bit about this. My girl child, one of the things that we have noticed is that she is a little bit different. She has always run to her own beats, and we've always considered it kind of quirky and interesting and different. But she asked me, she goes, "Do you think I'm autistic?" And I just kind of sat there with it for a little bit because I couldn't exactly say no, right?
Right.
I had to explain to her there's no test for autism, right? It's just
I mean,
really just kind
technically
of
yes, but not really, and
not exactly.
it's going off of gauge. Well, it the reason why I say that is because you got to get evaluated for it. So technically, they do have a test, but it's not like a blood test or like a
Right. It's not a definitive test, it's a
yeah,
behavior kind
yeah.
of test. And so, because we had that same conversation about ADHD, and we had a lot of those conversations about other things. And like, even when it comes to mental health disorders like bipolar disorder or general anxiety disorder,
Mm-hmm.
you take a questionnaire and they kind of guess what's going on here
True.
based on your symptoms. And I think in that case, it is, again, there's no definitive like test to say
True.
this is exactly what you are. And I think that is where the gamut goes because it's a spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've noticed like there's a lot more conversation among them now, a curiosity. And I even have heard about it in the news with various other people being diagnosed as autistic later on in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when we were growing up, there certainly wasn't an immediate focus on that. But it is refreshing to see this generation being so open and welcoming to each other despite those changes. There was no backlash or kind of like, oh, you're different. They said tism in such a lighthearted, easygoing way. It wasn't meant to be derogatory, which I thought, okay, that's nice because growing up, that definitely wasn't what we would have,
Yeah.
attributed that way or felt that way about it. But that all being said, we're seeing a lot of different things, like the anxiety that you mentioned, and certainly other things. As I've seen, a lot of the teenagers I've come into contact with, especially who happen to be my daughter's friends, have more serious disorders, are bipolar, are schizophrenic, are dealing with a lot of anxiety and unease. And that has really been something that I have felt strongly about. Like, have you talked to your parents about it? Because what I have also noticed is that there seems to be a divide often between that age and their parents. Because once you're a teenager, you don't want to tell your parents everything.
Right.
But fortunately, my daughter, trusts me enough that her friends tend to come to her and then she comes to me. Because I like to tell her, I was like, when there's something you can't handle, you need to talk to me so that we can figure out how best to handle it together. And as we're talking kind of about those struggles, there's always a dynamic with her friends of like, this is what I'm going through. I don't know what I should do. And when I suggest, I'm like, do you want to talk to your mom about this? Do you have a therapist? There's always a question mark with that, which I have always thought was interesting. They're like, oh, talk to my mom. Like, they don't listen. And I'm like, do you want me to talk to your mom? No, no, please don't. And so then we kind of have to figure out what we're going to do as a game plan moving on. Like, even with one of her friends recently, he was very suicidal. And I was like, let's talk through this. And I was like, we need to call your psychiatrist. Do you have like an emergency number? Do we call the suicide hotline? Like, we worked through a various amount of steps to get him what he needed. Ultimately, what I felt was useful is that he understood that he needed medication. He was in the midst of kind of a manic episode. So we talked through that. I was like, okay, so talk to me. How are we feeling? He goes, I don't know. I feel like I need to take my medicine. And I was like, okay. I said, so, you need to I said, you need to make sure you contact your psychiatrist because everything I said was no. Like, can you call your parents? No. No one knew where he lived. This was strange to me because I was like, I knew where my friends lived when I was growing up,
Mm-hmm.
but we're still a little further apart where we are. But nobody knew where he lived. Nobody knew how to get in contact with his parents. And everybody was scared. So I was in the midst of this friend group of trying to figure out where he was, trying to figure out where his parents were, like the next steps, and ultimately was grateful that I was able to get him calm, let him see kind of the reasoning behind, like, temporary feelings and emotions, and not to make permanent decisions when things change on the minute, on the hour, on the day, and not to let yourself get so low that you think there's no way to come back up. And he was just like, I hear you. And I was like, there's great things about you. And I don't want you, even though I don't know this kid, right? But I'm assuming, because my daughter loves this kid, that there's some great things about him, and that despite what he was going through, it was temporary. And by the end of our conversation, he had taken his medicine, that he was bipolar. So he had taken some medicine to kind of head off the episode, and then immediately got in contact with his psychiatrist. He told his parents as well. So I was like, I felt calm about that, but that definitely gave me a new awareness of what's going on with younger people and the things that they're dealing with now that may be a little bit different than what we've experienced. But we also know that a lot of times in mental conditions, there's a correlation between school attendance or engagement, right? So, what are some signs that you might have seen, either with your son or other kids, and that showcases this connection, or that can be seen as signs of maybe kids struggling with mental health concerns?
Well, I can definitely say with my son and with my daughter. um, I started noticing, to me, their behavior was changing a little bit, especially my daughter, because my daughter used to love going to school. Love, love. Like, if she was sick, she was like, do I really gotta miss school? Like, she hated doing that. And then to slowly start seeing, well, what's going on? Why are you not trying to get to school on time? Why are you, can I just stay home? Why? What's the matter? See, I think as parents, we forget to ask those questions. We're just so quick of saying, I'm the mom, I'm the dad, you're going. You're going,
That's right.
you're going.
That's right.
Versus looking at the behavior of the other thing, going, well, okay, let me dive in just a little bit and give you a little bit, hey, what's going on? Because I think sometimes as parents, we forget to parent, or we think parenting is only telling them what to do and not taking the time to actually try to dig in to figure out what is really happening and what's going on and what's causing the anxiousness that you may be feeling about even getting up to go to school. What, or how can I, like, my daughter started having issues with a girl, or her anger. She didn't know how to, so she just didn't want to be bothered with nobody. So that was a thing where she's like, I'd rather just stay home and not deal with nobody. My oldest, his was more um bullying, but not just from the students, sometimes the teachers. That's when he was in middle school, and that's when once I realized all that was happening, I immediately was like, all right, we're gonna pull you out and we're gonna put you in a different school. He still experienced bullying, but it was more so, well, he also had like a girlfriend she was going through her own mental, I feel like I want to say mental demons, because that's what I feel like they are. They was going through their own little mental demons, and she pretty much was taking it out on my oldest. And come to find out, she was doing it with other people too.
When you say mental demons, what does that mean?
When something is happening to you, but you can't say it, you do it to other people,
Oh, okay. Okay. So you
right?
kind of act out
Yeah,
what's being done to you.
right. Or acting out what you're seeing being done to somebody else. So, because I don't want to say it was actually being done to her, because I don't know. But I do know that this was a trend for this particular young lady, that she wasn't just focusing on my son. She also focused on another young man, and then also a young lady doing sexual stuff,
Really?
or unwanting touching, or forcing yourself on that person. Uh and then when you get rejected, now you become this person where you're threatening and threatening life. Um, so my oldest had to deal with that. He was dealing with the fact of, okay, well, I want to break up with her. And then to come to find out, he didn't even ask her to be his girlfriend. She kind of was like, I pick you. You're going to be my boyfriend. And my son was like, okay, like, okay, sure. Like,
Right.
and he would talk to me about, well, sometimes she would like force me to try to kiss her. And I'd be like, or forcibly touch me in places I don't want to be touched. Like she would touch my butt and she was touching, like trying to touch me down there. And, you know, and he goes, I have to break up with her. Like I don't want all of that. And she doesn't know how to take no for an answer. And even, I wish I still had these text messages, but even when he was like, I'm breaking up with her. And granted, he broke up with her on Valentine's Day. But she's now going like, whoever's gonna hurt me, I'm gonna hurt them. And now my oldest is like, help, mom, help. And I was like, well, if you broke up with her, she ain't gonna do nothing to you. And if she does, well, you got your mama. Because I ain't gonna let nobody do nothing to you. But and then of course the next steps action is going to the school. But that affected him in a way to where for a couple of years, or even now, he still don't even want you to mention her name. Because that still has an effect on him.
Yeah. But that's
So
trauma, right?
that's
Like
trauma,
he
right?
was
But then he
assaulted
also,
and
but for that period before she stopped coming, he didn't want to go to school. He didn't want to be around her. He didn't want to have the chance of running into her and having the anxiety of that I may run into you. I don't want to be at school, right? And so I had to take that in consideration. Then when it came to high school, um, it was no one understanding me. No one can understand. I'm anxious about traveling. Like he has social anxiety. So him traveling on the bus would be a lot for him. So he would rather just stay home. So sometimes, um, and sometimes I'm like, okay, cool. And then once I got a car, I just started driving him to school and saying, you're going to deal with your social anxiety when you go home. But, I need you to go to school, trying to force that part of the parenting on it. But initially, I had to understand because I don't know what that feels like to be so socially um anxious, knowing that you can't escape or
right,
that you feel like you have no room to, and then that anxiety that you may be feeling, excuse me, the panic that you may be feeling. I don't know what that feels like. So I don't know how enabling that is for you not to go to school. And I think we have to realize that our children are actually experiencing these type of things that we experience as adults. And just like how as adults, we technically don't have the tools, we think we have the tools, but we don't have the tools until we actually seek help and try to figure out what's going on with us. Our children are the same way,
right.
you know.
And
So
how would they know being at such a young age if we don't
right,
even know,
right.
right?
But I think it's very important to ask those questions if you're noticing that your children are not wanting to go to school, or one day they were doing great and they're like, yeah, I'm here and I'm happy. And then now a week later, like, I'm not happy and I don't want to go and I'm not going to go. And you're just looking at them like, what happened? Nothing. No, something happened. You can't let it just be like nothing happened. No, clearly there's something that did happen that triggered them to say, now I don't want to be a part of it. And it could be something very minute. It could be the fact that someone stared at them different and now they are self looking at themselves going, oh wow, I'm really different. This is really bad. Just even like with social cues, right? My son was left back. It took him a second to understand social cues too. But also, like I said, he also has a condition, but still, that plays a part when you're not with children your age or in your age group. Some of your social cues will be missed. And that can be a hard part for you too, not understanding what's happening. And then you don't want to be a part of that environment either.
Right.
But
So
it's our job as a parent to really try to dig in and try to figure out and find out why, and don't just take no for an answer. Like, okay, fine, we're not gonna, like, maybe okay, I'll let you have a mental day and you can not go to school
right,
today, or maybe I'll let you have like 2 mental days. Because also I think we need to also realize that too. Sometimes being so strong and all these things and having so much on our shoulders, we break down too. So the same thing
Yeah.
happened with kids, and I think that's important to really dig deep down and figure out what's going on. And I feel like for me, that's what I did with mine. Um, and then at that time, then you figure out if they need therapy or not. And 9 out of 10, they need therapy. I feel like everybody needs therapy. Everybody needs therapy. Children needs therapy because there's things that they can't express. They feel like they can't express, just like you were saying, listening to you talking about that young man. Like he was like, no, don't tell my parents. And then even what you were saying, well, we don't know how to get in contact with them. It was different with us. I said that could also be the other issue. Everybody got cell phones. So now that disconnect
Yes.
too for parents, and parents are completely different than when we were growing up because we had the house phone. So you
Right.
had to call the house phone to get in contact with the other
That's
person.
right.
And you had to be able like, okay. And even for me, I like to still vet my kids' friends. So if you're telling me this person is really close to you, well, at some point I want to talk to them, meet them, say hi, just so I can hear their voice, have a face to their face to them, so I know who you're interacting with. I may not physically know you, but if y'all saying y'all really close, then eventually I'm gonna be like, oh well, especially if you want to go somewhere. Oh well, tell their parents, give
Yeah.
them my number, so then
I
I
do
can
that if they
interact
want to
with
go
them.
somewhere.
Right. So then we have that still connection with the parents, and I feel like that's also another issue that's driving the wedge too with the school community, because how many parents actually show up to school events,
That okay, yeah.
right? But I'm saying, but that also plays a part, because then you have the ones who just don't show up. So now you're letting your child do whatever, and you're not trying to figure it out, or you do try to figure it out, but then you're like, it's not my kid, it's the school. But you're not digging in and trying to add, add things to the school, because the school needs us too.
Right. So I kind of want to stop you there because I think we're getting to this next question I want to dig into there a little bit. So that was a lot that we just covered. I mean, we ran the gamut between trauma and like mental illness and stressors that these kids are going through. So how can we really create true, safe, and affirming spaces in school where everyone can feel seen and respected and celebrated for who they are? Because one thing we haven't talked a lot about right now is that there are a lot of kids who are part of the LGBTQIA plus community, right? And my kids, a lot of their friends, they identify as part of this community from younger ages now, even more so. So, what are some things that we can do to create this space for them, especially in schools, because that's where they're going to spend the majority of their time? And like you mentioned, there's a lot of dynamics at play here, even with parents not even being a part of the school. So, what are some things you think that might move the needle or make a difference?
Definitely having social workers at the school
Yes,
to have group sessions to see where most kids are going through the same thing. I find that very effective. Even when I was growing up in high school, we had uh not I guess it was DARE, but technically it was a social worker conducting a group and having us talk about what's going on and how we're feeling. Same thing with elementary school, junior high school, middle school. I mean, high school. Feel like that's a key point, because every stage of their life, they're experiencing something. And like you said, kids are starting to question and wonder what's going on, what's happening, what does this mean? Well, does that apply to me? If it does apply to me, what does that mean?
right.
Um, so having a
And will you care about me? Like, who's going to accept me if I decide to tell you that this is who I am going to be? Right.
right, and and like you said, there are a lot of kids starting younger, but I also feel like they're being exposed to it younger. I don't feel like a lot of them,
Maybe really
they
understand all that.
understand what's happening. But it's also our job as a parent to make that a safe space too, and have those conversations where it's not a weird thing where it's like, oh, I condemn you against this or whatever. Just making it n- answering their questions as best as you can. I'm more very blank and front, straight to the point, so you can be like, oh, well, no, okay, cool. That's what that's what that means. If
Yeah.
you versus
You
me trying
are.
to
Yes.
versus me trying to beat around the bush and going, well, Johnny, if you like oranges and, and but they are red colored, it's No, I don't do all that. I just go, this is what this means. That's what that means. That means you da 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 da. And here it is. Like my daughter, she was like, okay, well, she asked me, she goes, well, what's bisexual? And I was like, well, first off, where do you see that and why you ask me that question?
That's a good question. That's an excellent question.
Because I need to know where the source was coming from. And it was awful like a TikTok type thing.
I
She's
was
like,
gonna say TikTok, YouTube. Yeah.
yeah, or CapCut or whatever. But it was like this anime, and they had a flag, and they weren't really like they were talking, but they weren't. And I was just like, okay, so well, it just means that you like girls and boys, but in a way that you know you want to do things with them. And she just looked at me. I said, but you like boys. And she was like, okay, so then what is that then, Ma? I said, that means you're heterosexual. She goes, well, do we have a flag? No. But why don't we have a flag? Girl, I don't know. But
You definitely get put in that hot spot as a parent
do.
for
I
sure.
do. But I say that as in they are getting exposed to that now. And be like I said, with me being as frank, I try to, so it's not like you can't come and ask me because you're gonna know you're gonna get the answer. You may not get the answer you want, but you know I'm gonna tell you the truth. So you can be like, all right, let me tell you. So I feel like also that's creating a safe space. Even at school, we shouldn't coddle them. We should be telling them the truth.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And telling them if you're feeling this way, that's normal or that's just a part of life. We all go through it. I ain't gonna lie, when I was in elementary school, I thought I was because I like looking at girls' butts, but I realized that's just I admire a beautiful young lady. And that ain't mean that I want to do anything sexually with them.
It's just an admiration.
Well, I mean, sometimes I may want, but that's besides the point. That
Okay.
doesn't
All
mean.
right.
But I'm saying, but just because you may have the thought does not now mean like, oh my God, is that what that means? No, that just means that's a thought. That was a feeling. It happened. And unless you're having these constant thoughts, I think that's the other thing too. No one's really explaining these things to these kids, but if I feel like kids respect honesty
They do.
and transparency. And while you're talking to them like they actually matter.
Yes. I think
So
I
if we
kind of
have
want
that in
to
school, yeah, if we have that in school, then it should be able to be an easy, and like I said, social workers should be the main thing. But go
conversation.
ahead,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think in school and outside of it, it needs to be an open conversation without condemnation or without any real judgment, but an explanation of what things are. I often tell my kids, I'm like, listen, everything changes from any day, from the time that I was 16 to the time that I was 30, all thoughts, preferences, and all of these things have mostly changed, have for the most part. I was
Hmm.
like, but what's really important is that you know that you are loved and you are accepted no matter what you do or think. Please don't hurt other people. That's a whole nother thing. We
Yeah,
don't hurt others. I was like, but
you can
in terms
respectfully
of
decline.
that's right. I was like, you can respectfully decline, but you can also understand that you're worth being here. You matter, you're loved, and no matter what the world says, like you're always gonna find that safe space at home. And I think this is one of the places I feel like school is important, but I would love the school to do a better job of educating parents a little bit about this
Hmm.
because I think that as parents, we all have our own belief systems and our own thoughts and feelings, but our kids are going to be exposed to all of them in this kind of hodgepodge of schools, unless you put your kids in a specific school that focuses and gives you all the all the thoughts and belief systems that you hold. And even in those spaces, I can tell you there's a lot of things being
And we can
exposed in
talk
them
about
too.
that another
That being
time, but yes.
said, yeah, we'll get into some of the pastor kid stories another time. But I definitely think to kind of wrap up most of what we were talking about here, it's that's one of the things that's just really important. Creating an area, a space that you can have a real honest and safe conversation, reminding them that they're loved and cherished no matter what, and that you'll be there no matter what. I think that's super important. We talked a little bit about how adults and their own mental health journeys can kind of impact a child's sense of stability. Just to get a little bit back to kind of kids maybe avoiding school or acting out in school. Um, and I'm wondering like how living in a household with your parent who may have some mental health challenges can impact children and how and their own capacity to be successful in school. Because to me, I've noticed that some kids they don't just want to, they want to not go to school because they want to stay home to take care of their parents who might be struggling, or they want to support someone who's going through something, or they just want to avoid having to be present for something and then go home to something else, right? So, in the same way, they might want to stay outside the house to go to school. So, I'm kind of curious, like, what your thoughts on that, because I know this is a big conversation. We could probably be in it and having a whole hour just talking about it by itself, but just want to kind of wrap it up with those kind of thoughts you have right.
I'm going to answer that question, but I just wanted to touch on one more thing what they could do at school. What I've noticed too with my oldest, because my oldest, he is non-binary, and he joined a club. So them having clubs that are LGBTQIA plus. I was like, oh, I'm gonna mess that up.
No, you're not.
Clubs where he was excited to actually be a part of because he felt like he belonged there, just because of him being non-binary. And now, granted, that does not mean that my child is gay, but he just wants to not identify as anything. So I think in that sense, that's all another way of having clubs
It is a bit
where they
about
can have.
fluidity, which I mean, my kids have kind of talked to me about that. I remember my son coming to me and telling me that and telling me his preferred pronouns. And I had to explain to him, I respect you. A mom is real and serious about grammar because that's what I do with my life. So I struggle to give you a pronoun that is not singular. You know what I'm
Well, I
saying?
mean, that's the one thing
Just,
my son
yeah.
does understand, that when it comes to mommy,
But
I
it's never
love you and I
disrespectful.
respect, right.
Right.
I love you and I respect you. However, I gave birth to a boy and you are a boy and you are he, him. Now, if you out here in these streets and then you want, that's fine. But mommy's not going to, he goes, I understand. And I give you a pass because you're my mom. I said, cool, 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 cool.
But long as you
But
have that
as
conversation,
long
I
as you
think
have that
that's
conversation, that's
important,
that's the
not
thing.
just to like ignore it without
Absolutely,
having a
which is
honest
something that ends up
conversation.
happening, or however. Now, going to the question that you asked at hand, when it comes to if children stay home because of a parent struggling, I can definitely tell you that my children, or at least my oldest, have tried to stay home if he's noticed that I am struggling, going through either postpartum, uh, depression, um, separation anxiety, I don't know. But, and he tries to stay home and take care of me, and I have to encourage him. So as parents, we kind of have to encourage them to, no, I need you to go ahead, because we don't want them to feel like right now, as they are children, we are their responsibility, because we're not. And I think that's a misconception as well. Also, that can also mean like they want to go home or they don't want to stay home, but I just feel like sometimes children can take advantage of the fact that they know that you are mentally not there,
Struggling, right? Maybe
right?
struggling a
Struggling,
little bit.
mentally struggling, and they know they can get over. As in, like, well, if I say no, you may not challenge me right now because you are having a moment. And if I do it enough, you're going to be like, fine, whatever. And you're going to walk away. And now I get to be here and take advantage of the situation that you are at hand. Because these kids are smart.
They are.
So that could be it. But also, too, I feel like most kids should want to not be there, but I feel like too, if we make it, because
Beware.
they should be aware of what's happening, as in if you're having a moment or having a episode, depending on what situation you have mentally, if they know you're having those type of moments, what they should do in the event that is happening currently, and not try to use that as an excuse or a crutch when it's not happening.
Yeah.
You
I want
understand what I'm
to,
saying?
absolutely, but I want to kind of break in here a little bit and say something I think is really important. You need to know yourself, right? So if you are struggling with your own mental health struggles, you often don't have a clear picture of this. You don't
Mhm.
have a clear picture of you or what you're going through, and you're not getting the help that you need. So it's going to be difficult for your child if they find themselves going through something like that to feel safe enough, to feel seen enough to get that same support as well. Because how are they going to get that if you can't accept what's going on with you? They're going to think, how can you possibly accept what's going on with me?
Ooh.
Right?
Ooh.
So I think there's a lot of components to this entire piece. I don't think, again, we're not going to cover it all in one episode, but I definitely think it's worth a conversation as we're going through these things with our own kids and our own communities. There's so much more that we can do.
Mhm.
um, but I also think it's important that as a parent, you don't forget that you need to know what you're going through. You need to take responsibility for what's going on with you. You need to get the
Accountability.
help,
Mhm.
accountability. That's right. You need to get the help that you need so that you can also help your children. Like they always tell you to put that life, that life,
And put the mask on and
yeah,
put the
that's right.
thing
The,
on before
the
you help
mask or
others.
the,
But even both, you still got to put both of those on
that's
first before
right.
you can help somebody else.
That's
Mhm.
right. That's right. I was like, they always tell you to put your stuff on first before you help someone else, because if you're not safe, then how can you possibly help anyone else? And I think that's an important lesson throughout all of this. Like, we want to make sure we provide support for the children in our community, the children in our homes, but it's super and incredibly important that you also recognize your own mental health struggles, whether you are a man or woman or whatever gender you want to be, non binary. And I think that's also especially important, that we highlight that it is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month as well. So we're talking about this in general, but want to specifically speak to men, women, non-binary, parents, all the things, because I think whoever you are in this as a being here on this earth, you need to spend some time with yourself and be able to identify if you are having struggles, and that you can also get the support that you need to continue to thrive and survive in this often kind of crazy, hectic world. So that was pretty heavy. That was a pretty heavy topic for today's parenting topic, because this is a conversation I think is near and dear to our hearts, because as we watch our children grow, we've seen them hit with things that are just kind of amazing. It's kind of shocking to see that your kids are dealing with things that adults are having trouble dealing with, and now they're being super exposed to these kind of conversations, and definitely in need of knowledge, education, and support to kind of handle that. All right, so let's move on to adulting.
Oh Lord, hold on. I feel like we need a pause, a break. That's just a lot. Hold on, let me just. Whew. Can we just
It's a
do a
lot.
quick? Can we just do a quick?
I think that was a
Yes. All right. Let's go now. Parenting
okay.
and adulting. We're on adulting now. Oh Lord. Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
I know this was a heavy episode. There'll be a trigger warning, don't worry. So, we're going to talk about the art of sustaining. So, in this particular topic, we're going to be talking about cultivating financial well being and thriving in healthy relationships. So, we're going to combine these topics because this week was full of the struggles at home, if you will. That way. We want to talk a little bit about, we're living in the economy where things cost a lot. And, we're not going to be political here, but there's no shock that it's hard. It's been hard for everyone I know to pay the same bills it feels like we were paying 6 months to a year ago. Everyone's a little bit on the struggle bus and looking for legitimate ways to manage their money and get more money coming in as they kind of figure out this new normal that we have. And we feel like this also can be related in some ways to having a healthy relationship, because there's a lot of communication. Often when you live with somebody, you run into both these things. Like, how could I have a conversation about money and maybe that's impacting our relationship? Not necessarily, it's not all one the same, but definitely feel like these are two components of things that are on our minds this week. So for the first question, why is it important to view both money management and relationship building as ongoing processes rather than one time achievements? Tanisha.
Because we spend money all the time.
Yes, yes, we do.
Girl, I thought about being a stripper. I need.
Well, could get them dollars. I mean,
But then that would cause issues in our relationship. So that would be
I
really
was gonna say,
good.
I don't know how that relationship's gonna go.
No, that would I will not have a man. Anyway, so I feel like I just forgot the question.
Said, why is it crucial to view both money management and relationship building as ongoing processes instead of one time achievements?
Because like I said, we're constantly spending money. That's a constant thing. A relationship is work. It's not a
We
oh
keep
hi.
saying this, but
It's work. If you want to
true.
healthy relationship, if you want to healthy relationship, not a toxic relationship, not just to say you were in a relationship, it's work. It's literally another full-time job. It's literally another full-time job, as well as trying to budget your life. It's a full-time job. That is not a one-time thing. You may make a budget today, and that budget may not work 2 days later.
It is
Because
difficult.
something
Yeah.
it's difficult. Just like I said, let's say I create a budget, right? But now we're at the end of the year, and there's so many things happening that my kids need me to shell out money for.
That may not have been included in the
And that
original
have not
budget,
been
right?
included in my original budget. Now it's like, well, some bill ain't getting paid. I guess that just throws off that budget. Because so yeah, so it's something that you need to work on continuously because everything can change day by day. Just like if you have a car, just if you have a house, or like things could break down. And now that's not a part of your budget. Was that a part of your budget? No. That may have been a part of your budget when you first moved in somewhere, or you first got something, but you spent it or it's saved over there, but you're like, well, I don't, I think that's the other thing too. People don't have savings like that, or you're tapping into your savings a lot more now versus when we were growing up. You can actually have your savings, and your savings is over there in the savings account. Like it didn't get touched because that was supposed to be before it is. Now, how this economy is,
How my money is set up
how my
essentially
money is
is.
set up is crazy. So of course, you have to find other ways. So yeah, but I mean for you, how does that work for you?
I mean, I want to say it's an ongoing process. I used to be extremely good at it. I'm not going to lie. I used to be very, very good at it. And I still am for the most part. Once I get money in, I will hoard it like you would not believe it. I can keep, like, I remember back in the day when I would get my tax return and I would live off of it for the entire year practically. And that was possible 10 or so years ago. Not so much these
Not in
days.
this economy, we can't be
Not,
living off of that. I
not in
remember
these
when I used
days.
to be able to like stretch that out. Still have about like, about what taxes and stuff. I get mine. I normally do mine early, so I get my money probably like in February, March. I normally could still have money around this time, and maybe a little bit left by September, depending on what was happening.
Right. I mean,
Now,
I could have kept mines were stretched out for like all year. They used to be like, how is this possible? But I also think there's a lot of things that have changed in the 10 years, but it's always going to be ongoing because, like you said, things happen. Like we lost our jobs. So we got severances and those things were gone like that because something had to happen.
listen, it was like it came and it was like,
I mean, mine was sitting there for a minute, but at the same time, I mean, unfortunately, I had to budget accordingly, which means we still had to have Christmas because I got kids and, they live their whole life for that, but it was a budget Christmas, very much so. But then also, fortunately for me, I started working right after my severance was over. So I thought I'd be able to save, but then our cars broke down and then, we had to get new cars. That took some chunk out of the savings. And then the bills started to line up because, we had medical emergencies come in. We had lots of stuff happen that you just don't plan for.
mhm.
And then you're suddenly looking at your bank account like, WTF? So what's going on? At the same time, what I do appreciate is that this is still a work in progress because this is not a perfect situation. My husband and I have to have these really important conversations like, how much money are we putting in to this? We do not share a bank account because I don't believe that. It's like I don't believe in that. But what we do is we have a conversation about bills, and we we adjust what you put in based on how much money you make. So if I'm the breadwinner, I'm going to put in more 2/3 of it, and you put in 1/3, and then we're going to figure out what that looks like. Well, that's great and all until your new car also breaks down. So you spent all your money, not all of it, but a good portion of your money to get this car. And then you have issues with the car right after the warranty runs out. So then suddenly, now you're underneath yourself, which means now you can't give money to the households because you're now paying for the car, which means the person who was paying 2/3 is now paying all of it, which then fully cuts into things. So, like I talked about, it's a very weird time that we're living in, and I'm seeing a lot of people kind of struggle with it. One of the things I am happy about is that we were able to have these conversations in a way that was not accusatory or angry, and it was very much a team dynamic. Like, we are in a spot, so what are we going to do? So, well, you want to know how we handle it? I have a freelance business, so I work a lot. I mean, let's just be honest. I work a lot. I work my day job. I work this wonderful podcast. I also work my freelance business. And we just picked up some, ride sharing, DoorDash delivery type situations as well, because I feel like you still need to have some hustle and responsibility in your opportunities to make ends meet. Like, as long as you're healthy and you have the resources, I feel like you can make the money that you need to make. Hopefully, you gotta have a little hustle though, because it's important to take accountability and, like we talked about, be able to say, like, put your big girl panties on, do what you gotta do, because it's temporary. So I was like, it's a temporary situation. Things will
Mhm.
even out again at some point, but in the meantime, you need to be real about what needs to happen, and maybe not think about what's beneath you at that point, right? Then you got to get a little bit more real about that and shift your mindset a little bit. So I told you how I shifted my mindset to deal with the financial issues that we've had to deal with. But I think more people need to probably do this, right? And actively grow your finances with a limited income. So what are some other options, Tanesha, that you might recommend? Because I know, like I said, I mentioned I have a freelance business that is in marketing and social media and public relations, which does help significantly as well. But when business is a little bit down, you have to make the ends meet. So what about you? What are some things that you would recommend for people who are struggling with that right now too?
I mean, I definitely have a lot of different apps that I
Okay.
use to make certain ends meet, make certain monies. Cause yes, like you said, I was laid off. Then I did get a job. And then I quit that job. It just wasn't it. And it really wasn't adding true beneficial money to my life. And I felt like it was just, what am I doing? This is not it. Cause I'm still also, you're trying to find a balance too of being a parent too. So
But yeah, there's that too. We got like 17 full-time jobs.
right. So, and me technically, I'm a single parent. Like I said, I got the co-parent, but I'm gonna stop calling him co-parent because he's not really a co-parent. But you know what? It's all right. And then yes, I have my partner, but I don't want to put all of that on him when it comes to my kids. So anyway, so I have a lot of different things, and as well as I know I was doing that to keep me back to focus. Sorry, you looked at me like, "Girl, what is happening?"
That's what happens when you work with your sister and they can read your face. That's what
It was
happens.
just a noise that just happened, and it sounded like someone just went through a wall or a door. Now, granted, my door is closed, but that's why I made the face. 'Cause I was like, what is that? And all that means is I think they're all playing. The partner and the children are playing, which means I'm just going
That
to
could
ignore
be a
it.
wall issue. So.
There can be something happening. I know they're doing something. But anyway, so I do a lot of different apps. So a lot of different that, and then also trying to really focus in on my businesses. Uh, coming out with my t-shirt company, doing my cupcakes, trying to get myself on DoorDash so people will want to order cupcakes. Trying to find different routes to be able to create money as well as a balance is hard, especially when some of these apps are not worth it. Like you said, DoorDash. Well, up here,
Yeah.
up here,
That's really like a pocket
It's
cash. I
it's
mean,
like
I
a
feel like
pocket.
it's some petty
That's
cash
not really
thing.
like
Yeah.
that's like, oh, I need to get like groceries real quick, or not even like I need to, like, you know what, I'm hungry right now and I don't feel like cooking.
That's where
Let me go make me a couple 20, make me
you
$20.
did use it to go grocery shopping between checks though.
Sometimes I have, yes, no, but what I do for that, I do like Instacart, because Instacart, I could do like maybe 3, 4 orders, and all of a sudden I got like $60, and I'm like, all right, I can get gas, or I can do
That's good.
this, or I can do that. But then also I have another app that's like a shipping app, where you go pick up packages, and depending on those and how far you go, you get a certain amount, and that could be worth it as well, depending. My problem is, like you said, You have to be driven and going after it. My problem is if I'm at home, I ain't leaving my house for $3. It ain't happening. For me to leave my house, once I put these apps on, it's like $10 or more. Then I'm like, all right, fine, I'll go.
Yeah, I feel like
But if it's
Uber
like,
does this to me where they're like, they send you on a wild goose chase and it's like 55 minutes out the way. And I'm like, decline because I'm not.
that's not worth it to
That's
me.
not worth it for my
Like, yes,
car.
I need money, but
Not like that.
that's not worth it. That's not like worth it. Just like even like Instacart, sometimes they may offer me $23 or $25, but I'm going from here to there, and it's during rush hour.
But yeah, no.
I mean, something that would probably take me 15 minutes to get there is going to take me 45 minutes. That ain't worth it, homie.
It's money. It's what we learned this lesson.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Time is
Time is
money.
money. But it's easier when you're outside. When I'm out the house, then sure, I'm like, all right, fine, I'll go do it. I'll do whatever. Because I'm already out the house. It's not like I'm leaving. But if I gotta leave my house to go do it, now it gotta be worth it. Because it's not where it's like it has to be worth it for me to want to
Has to
go,
be worth
okay.
it. Definitely. For sure. And then like, so
I
I
forgot
also
where
want
we
to
were going.
say,
Jeez.
I think financial discipline plays a role too. Like, so I
Absolutely.
don't want to say that that means you continue spending exactly the same thing. I think you also have to be mindful about your expenditures and what you can cut back on and what you can't cut back on, and try to live below your means as much as possible.
That's the
It just
problem.
is a bit difficult when you're raising children to do these things, especially if you don't come from a place of zero. If you come from a negative and you're doing your best. But I definitely think one thing that might help a lot of people is this financial education. There's a lot of courses out there, and we will link to some in this episode, because the more you understand your finances, the better you can make better decisions for yourself. Maybe avoid those payday loans. I mean, maybe avoid those title loans because those ain't never going to work out. Seeing what I've seen, don't do
I've never
those.
done that, but I definitely did a payday
I
loan.
definitely have seen someone who did payday loans, and they're illegal where I am. But previously, I watched someone do a title loan, and it took them like almost a year and a half to try to pay that back, and it was insane.
Yeah, I would never
So,
do that. I would have to be like really desperate to try to do that.
but that's what I mean. Like, I think one thing I think that would really help a lot of people is that financial education, to really understand the options available to you when you're in debt, for sure. And then also how to live below your means as much as possible. I know it is very difficult. Let's face it. Like, renting now is like an arm, a leg, and then some. Like, ooh, ooh, the rentals are deep, and they cost a lot,
Listen,
especially
it,
recently.
but they even did a study saying that the average American cannot afford to live in America.
You know what? That's true. That's true. That's why a lot of
Like we
people have
don't
3 to
get
4
paid.
jobs.
We don't get paid enough. Like no apartment should cost almost $3,000.
No, they shouldn't, because I
And
don't
let
even
alone
pay.
let it be a one bedroom. Not saying that's where I live. I don't live in a one bedroom, but I've known people who have a one bedroom that's almost
It must be amazing for you.
I know some people, and I knew some people who lived in an apartment that cost almost $3,000 and it was only one bedroom. What?
Crazy. But all right,
What?
let's pivot a little. Let's talk about the work involved in relationships, and what are some of the most common and significant difficulties people encounter when trying to cultivate that romantic, healthy relationship.
Miscommunication.
Yes, yes,
Not bringing your old relationship into your new one.
yes,
Trying to get rid of all the toxicity.
yes.
Uh, Trying not to be selfish.
Okay.
I knew I was going to hit a nourishing like.
Hold up on the selfish part, though. I
Okay, I'm not
think,
saying. Hold on. Wait. When I say selfish, I'm not saying that we shouldn't carve out time for ourselves.
okay,
But what I'm saying is everything is not about you.
that's true. That's true. That's accurate. I can say that. Everything is not about you.
But somehow we try to make it about us, me included. Anyway, so
You especially. Just especially not included. But
Oh, you said
Yes.
especially you not included? That's what
I
you said?
said,
You said especially not
no,
you not
that's not.
included? Oh,
Anyway, no,
okay. I'm
that's
about
not
to
what I
say,
said.
if I need to, I will call him right now and say, "Excuse me, I need you to tap in. Tap in, sir. Tap in."
No, my husband is brilliant. He knows not to get involved himself with these conversations. No, I think that you're absolutely right. There's a lot of things that you can bring from past relationships, but not a lot of things that I think are work are things the fact that we forget that like when you're in a relationship, you still have to do your own work, right? Like you still have to
Ooh, yeah.
examine how you got here because it's a pattern. You know what I'm saying? Like everyone thinks, oh, me and you, we broke up and I'm never going to have these problems with anyone ever again. And then you end up with the next person and you're like, this person's just like my ex. No, honey. I
It's
mean,
you,
that's possible,
homie.
but I mean, it is possible, but a good percentage, you could be the problem. The problem is you. So I think there's some self work that needs to happen there too, which we talked about previously. But I also think you can't get into a relationship and think, again, we talked about these unrealistic expectations previously because love and we're
It
going to
takes
be
more than
so
just love,
happy.
honey. It takes more than just
We're
damn
just going to be
love.
on clouds skipping with unicorns and butterflies.
And
This
if
is
you
not
are,
a
you're
Disney
lying.
movie.
Mm-mm.
It's not a Disney
Mm-mm.
movie.
If you actually pay attention to those Disney movies, not everybody gets the Prince Charming at the end. Something happens, they die, they do something happens.
Yes, that happens sometimes too. But in the real world, it could also be that, you don't have the same goals. Maybe you don't want kids and they want kids. Like maybe you want, maybe you don't want somebody who's going to be a stay at home person and that person's like, I don't want to stay home. I mean, you just have you're two different people. And to maintain a healthy relationship, I think is really important to first know yourself and accept yourself, but also be willing to accept your partner and their
Where they
faults
at?
too. Right.
Not
Where
have
they're
them up
at.
here. Because sometimes we have them up here and we're like, so you're supposed to be here, right? So when they don't meet that expectation, they're down here and you're like, well, why you ain't up here? And they're like, oh, when did I ever say I'm going to be there? And you're like, but no, you were here. And that's the other thing too. Once the honeymoon phase is over, because everybody is great in the beginning, everything is perfect in the beginning. Once that honeymoon phase is over, and sometimes that could take a month, a year, 3 weeks, four
When everybody
days,
takes that mask off and you see what's really there, and you
and
find
you're
out that's like Mr. Pumpkinhead, and you're like, I never asked.
and then you're like, if I really knew this how you were, we would have never talked. How dare you? But then you have to, you got to kind of do the work because now you have to sit in it. Because I saw somewhere too, I watched something on Instagram where it was two different people and they was talking about their relationships. This person grew up one way. That's the other thing. So we have to remember we're coming from two different backgrounds.
That's
We're not
right.
going to be coming from the same background. There's some that are, and that's great, but you're still not, it's still not going to
You're
be the
still
same. It's still going to
individual
be
people
something.
with individual experiences.
Correct. So watching them and talk, she goes, well, I came from a family where things were expected. You don't get a pat on your back because you did something versus this person's like, well, we celebrated each other. We did this. And now they kept butting heads and they couldn't understand why they kept butting heads. And she's looking at you like, you're supposed to do this. I ain't patting you on the back because you brought me some food. What's wrong with you? And you're like, why are you not giving me love and affection? What's going on? Why are you not loving me? And then you have to come together. That's the thing that we forget. We have to come together to figure out what works for us. Because
That's
I feel
right.
like also social media has clouded all of our
Everybody's couple
expectations.
goals.
Oh,
Everybody's couple goals. And you're like, you're not this person, honey. Like I can tell you, my husband and I have very different backgrounds. And I have a very weird background. Like I had one side of my family that was super close, super like affectionate. I had one side we were like, do not touch me. Please keep your distance. So there was a lot of understanding what each other needed. And that took a long time and a lot of communication and a little bit of therapy to be able to say, like, this is my hard line. Like, I need someone. I like to be alone. I do. My husband likes to be alone. We had to understand that that space was important for both of us, which is why everybody has their own rooms in my house. Everyone has their own rooms where they can go. Because when we didn't like it. We fought all the time because everyone needs their own space. At the same time, I'm the same way. You're supposed to do that. Why you need a hip hip hooray? I tell him, do you need a cookie? Like every time, like, did you think you were getting one for here for cutting the lawn? Because I cooked dinner 7 days this week. Where's my cookie? Nobody gave me a cookie. And he's like, oh. And that was a cause of some conflict at first, to understand what our love languages were
Mm.
and what the rewards that we wanted were. Because I was like, reward for Kiara is money. Hand it over, please. Money or experiences. Let me go somewhere fun.
Oh, I'm about to say kind of
His
experience.
reward involves the bed
Oh,
as much as possible. So we had to come to an understanding of what was more needed. He also is very affectionate. And I was like, oh, so you want me to like hug you and like be up underneath you like all the
that
time?
is not you. You hate it when I be like, hi. You're like, oh my God.
Stop it. But I've also gotten used to it, to the point where now, 20 years in, I'm like, time to snuggle and watch our movie. But those are things you learn, you adapt, and you change, and you have to give yourself space and opportunity to do so. That's all I'm saying. You really, and it takes work. It has taken years and years of work. Steps forward, steps backward, some fights, some arguments, and learning how to argue is another skill I think is super important in a healthy relationship. You have to understand, set the groundwork for what an argument looks like and what you want to get out of it. Because an argument should not bring you so far apart that you can't see the other person and you don't want to see them for the next 6 weeks. It should be something like, okay, our goal is this. How do we get here? You feel free to pause in the middle of whatever crazy thing you about to say and think about it. Like, how do I want this person to receive the message I'm going to give them? Are they going to receive it if I call them every name but theirs? Or like, some people are triggered by hearing cursing at them. Like, if I yell at my husband, he's going to shut down. He's like, that's not me. I don't like it. Because his background says that when people yell at him, he needs to go away. So then I had to learn how to communicate in a way and say, okay, I'm really angry. So give me a few minutes to like calm down and have a conversation. And when things get heated, we got to pause. But we also had to come to the conclusion that the goal of this is to remember that we're a team. So
Mm.
at the end of the day, sometimes that argument doesn't have a solution. Sometimes it's just like, I was arguing because I had a bad day and I really didn't want nothing. I know that was kind of crazy, but that's just the kind of day I had. And it was like, is that what you needed? Like, yes. And I apologize. But doing that kind of work, that honesty, that kind of like deep work of saying, like, this was my goal in this argument. This was really important to me, or this really wasn't. That's another thing. I know I'm just spitting facts over here. I know.
I mean, you are. And I
Been
can
there,
say
seen it.
that I'm definitely learning a lot. Cause I will say, you may differ. That's fine. But this is one of my healthiest relationships I've ever been in. Because the communication, well, one, when we argue, it's not a what I used to do. I literally will just be quiet for like good.
Oh, so you silence yourself
I
shortly.
silence myself to be able to receive the information that's being said. So I think that's the other problem. We're arguing so our point can get a, across versus actually trying to hear and receive what the other person's saying. We're always listening to respond versus actually listening to comprehend and understand what is being
Right.
said.
You got to
So,
listen to understand.
and that's something I am learning in this relationship. Like, listen, we had an argument earlier, but it was one of those like, all right, you hurt my feelings. All right. And he was like, you can go away. You're just looking at me like you're like a blank teenager. And I'm just like, go cry in the corner, whatever, goodbye. And I just like, and I left. Now, yes, I was in my feelings. I was, and then, he came and, he gave me like a little come kiss on my neck and like, and he left. Like he knew like leave me alone, but then I started crying. I was like, I don't understand why you were doing all these things and you're doing. But
Lord.
he left. He didn't see me. He didn't hear it. But when he came back, I had time to understand what we were really arguing about and not trying to make it all about me. And I had to see it from his perspective. So I had to apologize and saying, "You're right. I was taking accountability. I was trying to make an excuse, even though whatever the case is, I do
As long as both
apologize."
people take accountability,
That's what
that's
I
fine.
said. But I do apologize for making you feel that this, and the third wasn't happening.
Absolutely.
But then after he accepted my apology, accepted the fact that I took a second to actually think about it versus me just wanting to keep rebuttaling and keep going at it, then I just say, but in turn, this also did make me feel a way though,
That's right.
because this, and the third. And then we talked about that because it's not like he's like, I'm not trying to make you feel away, and I wasn't even trying to make it seem like I was really mad. It was just so then that was communication happening.
That's right. Communication is key.
And I could tell you, coming from a toxic relationship, and nah, that never happened. I always apologize. That Negro never apologized. I always feel like I had to over explain myself. Even now, I'm still trying to unlearn how not to over explain myself and trying not to like make it, trying to make everything right and actually sitting in it and understanding, girl, you're not right all the time. Girl, like,
I mean, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm always right.
you know what? I'm done with you because we've had this conversation.
We are.
But
I'm not, but I am.
But that's a part of taking accountability, understanding that no, I'm not right all the time. And that's the problem too, because I'm spoiled rotten and I don't know how not to be spoiled rotten. So you not have to figure it out in my age of life.
Or you can just find someone who likes to spoil you.
I mean, but I like being
Okay, I'm
spoiled in
not going
other
to
ways
argue. I
too. I
respect.
like being spoiled in other ways too, not just money. I like affection. So when you want to start
Okay,
spoiling me,
well, let's get ready to wrap this up.
oh, see now we want me to stop. See, you had your whole little, you know, fine, whatever. Either way, healthy relationship is work, guys.
100%. Even this relationship takes work. It really does. Like the fact we need to wrap up now because we've been with you guys a whole hour. And we want to recap this. This was a heavy episode at some point. Hopefully, we ended on a much more lighter note as we told you a little bit about the crazy relationship advice that you should absolutely take from us because, I mean, we're just living. We're just living to the best of our ability. But we want to thank you for joining us today. Want to remind you that this is your opportunity to hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media accounts on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Threads. And
You can listen to us on iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Amazon Audio, Audible, and
Pod
podcasts.
podcast. She's gonna get this one time now.
I'm gonna get it right. I promise. Pocket Podcast. I should just think about it in my pocket. In my pocket. Pocket Podcast. And of course, Spotify.
That's right. And don't forget, you can come see us on Main Event mamaspodcast.com where you can get all the things caught up to mama, period, and be able to find all of our videos, all of our socials. You can send us messages. You can join our mailing list because goodies will be coming out sooner or later. And you can also follow us there, which is another way to just keep up with the mamas throughout the week.
And just so you know, we are not new to this.
We're true to this.
And this was Main Event Mamas.